Muhammad Ali stood in a Houston military induction center on April 28, 1967, and did something that would cost him everything. When his name was called, when he was ordered to step forward and accept induction into the United States Army, the heavyweight champion of the world refused to move. In that moment, he lost his title, his income, his freedom to fight, and faced 5 years in federal prison. But he gained something that would outlast any championship belt, a legacy of courage that changed America forever. To understand why Ali's refusal was so shocking, you have to understand what he was giving up. In 1967, Muhammad Ali was at the absolute peak of his powers. He was 25 years old, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and considered virtually unbeatable. He defended his title 9 times. He was making millions of dollars per fight at a time when $1 million was real money. He was famous across the entire planet, recognized in every country, celebrated as the greatest boxer who ever lived. And he was about to throw it all away. The Vietnam War was raging in Southeast Asia. American soldiers were dying by the thousands. The government needed more troops, and they were drafting young men across the country. Muhammad Ali's draft notice had come in February 1966, but he'd initially been classified as unfit for service. He'd failed the Armed Forces qualifying test, scoring in the 16th percentile. The Army didn't want him. But as the war escalated and casualties mounted, the military lowered its qualification standards. Suddenly, Ali's test scores were good enough. In February 1966, he was reclassified as eligible for the draft. The news hit Ali like a punch he never saw coming. "Man, I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," Ali told a reporter when asked about the reclassification. It was a spontaneous comment made in the moment, but it would become one of the most famous quotes of the 1960s. "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger." The statement was simple but devastating. Ali was pointing out the absurdity of being asked to fight for a country that still treated him as a second-class citizen. In 1966, Black Americans were being beaten for trying to vote. They were refused service at restaurants. They were forced to use separate water fountains and bathrooms. They were lynched in the South with impunity. And now the government wanted Ali to go halfway around the world to fight people who'd done nothing to him? The backlash was immediate and brutal. Newspapers across America condemned him. Sports writers who'd celebrated his boxing skills now called him a coward, a traitor, and un-American. Former fans burned his posters and destroyed his memorabilia.
"I pity Clay and abhor what he represents," wrote Jimmy Cannon, one of the most influential sports writers of the time. "This is a sect that deforms the beautiful purpose of religion." He was referring to Ali's membership in the Nation of Islam, which Ali had joined in 1964 after winning his first championship. The Nation of Islam, led by Elijah Muhammad, was controversial and feared by many white Americans. The FBI had the organization under constant surveillance. J. Edgar Hoover considered it a threat to national security. When Ali announced he was a Muslim and changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, he'd already become a target. Now, refusing military service, he became public enemy number 1. But Ali wasn't backing down. In fact, he was just getting started. Over the next year, as his case wound through the legal system, Ali became increasingly vocal about his opposition to the war. He spoke at colleges. He gave interviews. He explained his position with the kind of clarity and courage that terrified the establishment. "Why should they ask me to put on a uniform and go 10,000 miles from home and drop bombs and bullets on brown people in Vietnam while so-called Negro people in Louisville are treated like dogs?" Ali said in one speech. "If I thought going to war would bring freedom and equality to 22 million of my people, they wouldn't have to draft me. I'd join tomorrow. But I either have to obey the laws of the land or the laws of Allah. I have nothing to lose by standing up for my beliefs, So, I'll go to jail. We've been in jail for 400 years. The words were powerful, but they came with a price. Boxing commissions across America began canceling Ali's fights. Promoters who'd been eager to work with him suddenly had scheduling conflicts. The government made it clear, if Ali wouldn't fight for America, he wouldn't be allowed to fight at all. On March 22, 1967, Ali fought Zora Fali in New York City, defending his heavyweight title for the 9th time. He won by knockout in the 7th round. It would be the last time Muhammad Ali fought in a boxing ring for 3 years and 7 months. He was 25 years old, in his absolute prime, and his career was being taken from him. Then came April 28, 1967. Ali was ordered to report to the Armed Forces Induction Center in Houston, Texas. The military was going to induct him whether he liked it or not. But Ali had made his decision. He would not go. He would not compromise. He would accept whatever consequences came. The scene at the induction center was surreal. Reporters crowded the building. Protesters gathered outside, some supporting Ali, others calling him a traitor. Inside, military officials prepared for what they knew would be a historic confrontation. Ali arrived with his attorney and several supporters from the Nation of Islam. He was calm, dignified, and determined. The process was formal and cold. A group of young men, all draft inductees, were lined up. A military officer called out names, one by one. When your name was called, you were supposed to step forward, cross a line on the floor, and officially become a member of the United States Armed Forces. The room was silent, except for the officer's voice. Cassius Marcellus Clay. The officer used Ali's birth name, refusing to acknowledge his Muslim name. It was a small insult, but a deliberate one. Ali stood motionless. The officer called the name again. Cassius Marcellus Clay, step forward. Ali didn't move. He stood with his hands clasped in front of him, his face expressionless, his feet planted firmly in place. Every eye in the room was on him. The other inductees, young men about to have their lives changed forever, watched the heavyweight champion of the world refuse to cross that line. The officer called the name a third time. Cassius Marcellus Clay, this is your final opportunity to comply. Step forward and be inducted into the United States Army. Ali's voice was quiet but clear. I refuse. Those 2 words sealed his fate. Within hours, the New York State Athletic Commission suspended his boxing license. The World Boxing Association stripped him of his heavyweight title. Other state boxing commissions followed suit. Muhammad Ali was no longer the heavyweight champion of the world. More importantly, he was no longer allowed to box anywhere in America. On May 8, 1967, Ali was indicted by a federal grand jury for refusing induction. He faced up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. His passport was revoked, so he couldn't fight overseas either. The most famous athlete in the world, at the peak of his physical powers, was banned from the profession he dominated. The trial was swift. On June 20, 1967, an all-white jury in Houston deliberated for just 21 minutes before finding Ali guilty. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison and fined him $10,000. Ali was released on bond while he appealed, but his boxing career appeared to be over. The financial impact was devastating. Ali had been making millions of dollars per fight. Now he had no income from boxing. The Nation of Islam supported him financially, but barely. He gave speeches at colleges for small fees. He appeared on talk shows. He became a symbol of resistance to the war. but he was essentially broke and facing prison time. But something interesting was happening in America. Public opinion was beginning to shift. When Ali first refused induction in 1967, most Americans supported the Vietnam War and condemned Ali as a coward. But as the war dragged on, as American casualties mounted, as the lies about the war became evident, more and more Americans began to question whether the war was worth fighting. Students protested on college campuses, veterans returned home and spoke out against the war. Civil rights leaders connected the struggle for equality at home with the immoral war abroad. Martin Luther King Jr. came out against the war in 1967, citing many of the same arguments Ali had made. The counterculture movement embraced Ali as a hero. What had started as a deeply unpopular stance was becoming mainstream. But Ali was still banned from boxing. For 3 years and 7 months, from March 1967 to October 1970, Muhammad Ali couldn't fight professionally. These were supposed to be his prime years, ages 25 to 28, when a heavyweight boxer is at his physical peak. Ali watched as other fighters competed for his old title. He watched as his skills, his timing, his reflexes, the things that made him great, began to erode from lack of use. "They can take away my title, they can take away my license, but they can't take away my skill," Ali would say. "I'm still the people's champion. I'm still the greatest." He'd shadowbox for reporters, showing them he still had the speed, the footwork, the magic. But everyone knew that time was being stolen from him, years he could never get back. The legal battle continued. Ali's lawyers argued that he was a conscientious objector, that his religious beliefs as a Muslim minister in the Nation of Islam prohibited him from participating in war. The government argued that Ali was just trying to avoid service, that his religious claims were insincere. Various courts ruled both ways, sending the case up through the appellate system. Finally, on June 28, 1971, the United States Supreme Court overturned Ali's conviction. In a stunning 8-0 decision, with one justice abstaining, the court ruled that Ali's beliefs were sincere and that he qualified as a conscientious objector. The conviction was thrown out. Ali would not go to prison.
But the victory came 4 years after his initial refusal. 4 years of his career gone. 4 years of lost income, lost opportunities, lost time in the ring. Ali was 29 years old when the Supreme Court vindicated him. Most heavyweight champions are past their prime by that age. Everyone assumed Ali's best days were behind him. They were wrong. In October 1970, while his case was still pending, some boxing commissions had started licensing Ali again. The political climate had changed enough that keeping him banned was becoming untenable. Ali returned to the ring on October 26, 1970, fighting Jerry Quarry in Atlanta. He knocked Quarry out in 3 rounds. Ali was back, but he'd never be quite the same. The 3.5 years away from boxing had cost him his legs, his reflexes, some of his speed. The Ali who returned in 1970 was slower, more flat-footed, more willing to take punches than the Ali of 1967. He'd have to compensate with strategy, with determination, with heart. In March 1971, Ali fought Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship in what was billed as the fight of the century. 2 undefeated champions meeting in the ring to determine who was truly the greatest. Ali lost in a unanimous decision. It was his first professional defeat, and it was devastating. But Ali refused to quit. He fought his way back, winning fight after fight, until in 1974, in Zaire, Africa, he defeated George Foreman in the famous Rumble in the Jungle to reclaim the heavyweight championship. He was 32 years old. Most experts had said it was impossible. Ali proved them wrong. He'd go on to win the title a third time, becoming the only boxer in history to do so. He fought until 1981, long past when he should have retired, his speech already slurred from the neurological damage that would eventually be diagnosed as Parkinson's syndrome. But he fought because fighting was who he was. The question people ask is whether Ali's stand was worth it. He lost 3.5 years of his prime. He lost millions of dollars. He lost his first championship without ever being defeated in the ring. He spent years facing the possibility of prison. He was vilified, threatened, and treated as a pariah by the country he'd represented at the Olympics. But he also helped change America. His stand against the Vietnam War gave courage to thousands of other young men who didn't want to fight in an unjust war. His willingness to sacrifice his career for his principles showed that athletes could be more than entertainers, that they could use their platform for social change. His conversion to Islam and his insistence on being called by his Muslim name helped mainstream the religion in America.
By the time Ali lit the Olympic torch at the 1996 Atlanta Games, his hands shaking from Parkinson's, his speech impaired but his dignity intact, he'd been transformed from villain to hero. Presidents sought his endorsement. World leaders wanted to meet him. The man who'd been stripped of his title in disgrace was now honored as one of the greatest Americans who ever lived. "I'm not going to help nobody get something my Negroes don't have," Ali had said back in 1967. "If I'm going to die, I'll die now, right here fighting you if I want to die. You my enemy. Not no Chinese, no Viet Cong, no Japanese. You my opposer when I want freedom. You my opposer when I want justice. You my opposer when I want equality. You won't even stand up for me in America for my religious beliefs, and you want me to go somewhere and fight, but you won't even stand up for me here at home?" Those words, spoken in anger and frustration, turned out to be prophetic. Ali's stand helped America confront its own contradictions, its own failures, its own need to change. He paid a terrible price for his courage, but he never backed down, never apologized, never regretted his choice. "I did what was right," Ali would say years later when asked about his refusal. "I didn't go for money. I didn't go for fame. I went for what I believed in, and I'd do it again." That's what real courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face consequences for doing what's right. Muhammad Ali didn't just fight in the ring. He fought for justice, for equality, for the right to live according to his conscience. And in the end, he won that fight too. If this story of courage and principle inspired you, share it with someone who needs to remember that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it costs you everything. Sometimes the fights outside the ring matter more than the ones inside it.